JT's interactions with various people that were violent definitely woke Sudhir up. He kind of never saw that side of JT, and he always thought he was like, I don't know if he thought it was like a joke or if he thought it wasn't as serious as JT was making it out to be. But when he saw JT have to like actually like set rules and like kind of like enforce those rules, it definitely shocked him and kind of scared him a little.
Although like that was like Sudhir, he probably was scared. I mean, I know he was scared and he saw everything like differently with JT, but but like gangs can also I don't know. Although like that was a weird thing and it showed like a bad side of the gangs. Like I'm not saying gangs are a positive thing or a good thing, but like it could possibly like bring out positive results in communities. Not of course they have negative things like the drugs and the violence associated with it, but like the gangs do things for the community, like the basketball games, and I feel like it's a family. Although they do negative things and people get into trouble, there's a lot of violence, but they do bring people together and yeah.
Um, Actually, like reading the book and seeing how the gangs kind of like bring the community together, if anything, like it was very surprising. Because when I usually hear about gangs, it's like they create problems, like they kill people, they bring drugs into communities. Like although these things are like prevalent in these communities, I think it would always be there even if there weren't gangs. Like people would do it individually. So I think having a gang is almost like having like parents who keep you in line, who make sure you're okay, who like make sure you pay on time, even make sure you do your work. Like I think gangs are actually beneficial in a way, but also detrimental.
I thought it was interesting like seeing Sudhir as a gang leader because like to me that was just I don't even know. It was like
It was it was like oh my god. JT's interaction that was violent with some of the community members definitely scared Sudhir. Um, he kind of felt scared to be in their friendship. Like he didn't know. He had a different tone with him. He didn't know how to speak to him. After that, he was kind of ashamed to be his friend. He didn't understand like how JT couldn't feel just guilty about hurting people, just to enforce rules. So I think it was definitely a wake up call for Sudhir.
I feel like it was also a moment of like who are you? Like it was like he knew that he was a gang leader. Like that's violence along with that. There's so many things that go negative things that like go along with that. But like I feel like his view on like people in this community, like gang people who are in gangs, especially the gang leader, like changed by following them and getting to know them. But then it was like when he saw that, it was like damn, who are you?
I definitely think gangs are kind of like parents for the community. They keep the community in line. They keep things in order. Although they do cause a lot of trouble, like drive-by shootings and drugs going in and out of the community. I think that without a gang, individuals would still partake in drug activity or prostitution or any of these things that are considered to be negative. So I think gangs are beneficial as well as negative.
I think that's like especially in this specific gang, they do things for the community. I think it's a family, although they do like negative things like the drugs and the violence. It's really bad for the community too, but I feel like they also do positive things for the community. They protect each other, protect their families. They provide for each other and their families, and they just make sure that everything's okay within with what they can do. Like they can't, have because drive-by shootings and other violence from the outside, but they do what they can do for their own communities.
Sudhir as a gang leader must have been really hard. I remember he had to make a decision between whether Bill or Otis was wrong, or if Bill owed Otis money, and whoever was wrong in this situation definitely was gonna receive some violent consequences. And I think Sudhir definitely knew that, and he felt very guilty, like choosing. So I think he was definitely put under a lot of pressure to kind of keep things in order, and he definitely saw some things he didn't want to see, like illegal things that he definitely would have to make choices about, and that made him feel guilty because he knew he wasn't supposed to be doing these things. But I think it's part of the job, and I think if you're going to do the job, you have to do every single part of it. So I think that that was kind of important to see, like, Sudhir go through the motions of being a gang leader.
I thought Sudhir like realized that the I won't say job, but like the being a leader of a gang, it's very serious. You have to make like decisions like really quickly. Some decisions that may go against your morals or how you've been raised. And I think that's why it was a challenge for Sudhir because he wasn't used to this. And even though he had been like around the gang, he wasn't really like actively like partaking in anything. He was just watching. And so now he was a leader, and I think he realized that it's very, very, very serious. And I think I won't say it made him respect JT more, but he saw that it wasn't just like people wouldn't think that a gang leader is like a serious thing or like it's an important job, but like that like they make a lot of decisions, and what they do affects a lot of people in their community or in their like little family, I would say.
I definitely think Sudhir being a gang leader for a day challenged who he was. His values were definitely put under the wire. He had to make decisions that didn't necessarily coincide with his values, but I think at the end of the day, it kind of showed how he has a lot of compassion for people. Like, although he had to make these decisions and it hurt a lot of people, I think he definitely, it just showed how much compassion he had because after making these decisions, he was like, wow, like, I feel guilty. So I think, although he did some things that were against his values, I think it improved who he was as a person.
Yeah, I think it made him stronger.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how the women in the community have like a skewed view of men. I think it's very unfortunate how these women are basically like conditioned to feel a certain way about men, and I feel like either way, like they could have a negative view on men and just think all men are just like disgusting or just like bad, try to sleep with them, or they can have a view where it's like what they're used to seeing like in these men in the gangs or in the community, they can think that or be conditioned to believe that that's right. So they would make us like they would go to those kind of men. So it's like either way, it's like you think they're wrong, you think all men are like that, or like you think they're right and you think you want that. So it's just very unfortunate. It's not fair, and it just goes to show how like where you're raised and like what you're around and your experiences like form who you are. And I think that's a sad part about like people who are born in poverty and like gangs, and like they get to see all these bad things because they can't. That's their mindset. You know what I mean? Like they can't get out of that, and that's it. Just yeah.
I remember when Sudhir started a workshop for the community with all these young girls, and the mothers started to hate Sudhir, and he didn't understand why at first, but then he realized, like, these women hate me because they're suspicious of me. And so these women were suspicious of him because they thought that he was sleeping with their children. And so I just think it's very sad to think that you can't have a male figure that is positive in your life without believing or having some doubts about, like, whether he's doing things to just sleep with you or to, like, take your money or just, like, anything. Like, you just have negative doubts about men in general. And I think it's very sad, like, how some of the women in the workshop were talking about how their boyfriends were abusive and, like, alcoholics and just, like, hurt them. And I think it's troubling. Like, these especially young girls who have to see it and, like, be a part of it. It's just really sad to see how they see men.
And these young girls, like, they still have their life to live. So it's like they almost like it's like you're stuck. Like you really can't control like your upbringing, like what you're around, because like it's just a part of who you are, and that determines like your life. Unless you like get out of it and you realize it's different or it's wrong and you want to change it. Let's talk about the drive-by shooting. I feel like the drive-by shooting was like the first time where I think Sudhir realized that this was like a real was when he saw JT beat up the guy.
Yeah.
But I think that right here with the drive-by shooting, Chapter 7, he was so vulnerable. Like no one in the gang could help him, because before like he was like with the gang and they protected him, make sure he was okay, and there was no real like violence surrounding him that could have got to him. But like in this moment, like it was real. They couldn't help him. It was all like external forces like coming. You know, with the shooting, like he could have been hurt. He could have been killed, and that's like, to me, that's like really scary.
Like when you read about a drive-by shooting, it's definitely scary, but being a part of it definitely had to be like almost like just utter shock. Because I remember in the book they talked about how people were running out of the tenants to like help friends or like to help children hide, and I just think it's really sad that these people are so vulnerable, and at any moment someone could die, or at any moment like you could lose a family member or a friend, and I just think it's also very terrible for these children to be living in these communities where there's guys with guns that could possibly just kill a little child or their mom or their dad. Like, it's just really sad to have to like see it, and I think Sudir definitely was like, wow, like this is real. Like, I think there were many wake up calls throughout the book, but this was definitely like a big one.
And also to me, it's like weird because like gangs, people like say like a good thing about gangs sometimes is like protection, but I think with this situation we realize that like you can't always be protected by your gang or like really anyone. Like, you're vulnerable, and yeah, like that's like that was weird and eye opening to me because I thought that it was almost like they were like untouchable because they're like in a gang and they have each other, but like you don't.
So when the officers came into the book, like they started talking about officers more, my views of officers definitely changed. Officers partake in a lot of the drug activity, and like although gang members are hustlers or like people who like get money for bad reasons, the police like they would bust parties and take money from the drug dealers and take their drugs, and from gang members take their weapons and stuff. So I think it's definitely disappointing to see that like police officers partook in some of these bad things, and they wouldn't like give the things that they confiscated to the department. Like, they would keep it for themselves. And when the officers interrogated the community interrogated Sudir about the community, I think it was definitely hard for him to be in that position because he was like, should I be loyal or should I be truthful? So I think it was definitely a hard position for Sudir.
I love how the book forces readers to just look outside the norms we face every day and the stereotypes, because even like Sudir, he acknowledged it on his own like through his experiences, but like when you read the book, you're really forced to see people in a different way that you like wouldn't normally see them in society like today. Like, for instance, just in general, like the black people, or just even like JT as a gang leader, we saw a good side of him. We saw him being like a loving man, a protected man. Like, he protected his family and he was a family guy. And we saw a different side of him that people like wouldn't usually think. So like we were forced to like break from that stereotype. And also with the police, I feel like police are usually looked at as like the good guys, and they'll help you, but like there are some officers that will do bad, and it showed that part. It showed that these police officers, they were involved, and this is real life. They were involved, and it's like it just forces you to like look beyond what you are usually told or like expected to feel about certain people.
And it definitely relates with today and how like police officers are not following protocol, and they're being very like harsh towards people who don't deserve to have their lives taken away or to be in jail. When I don't know, I just think it relates a lot to today, and how like a lot of talk is going on about how police officers need to be watched or have cameras on them because they're not following protocol. So I think it relates a lot.
I think that when like Sudir was very weird about like breaking the news to JT about that this book wasn't an autobiography about his life, and it was just a book in general. I thought that it would be like really weird and like not selfish, but just weird that it would be about JT. Like, I thought that the book and like how he was doing his research, it was telling stories, and it shouldn't have only been about JT. It was like telling stories about these people and like their lives, and like learning why people are this way, and like the poverty. It was very not just about like, I didn't think it should have been about JT. I thought that it was good to tell stories of many people in the same situation. You know what I mean?
It was definitely like heartbreaking to kind of see Sudir like struggle with telling him, because they're such good friends. And I think that as much as JT like loves his community and like does a lot of